News and the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast. Welcome to another Talkin Ball Daily. And we're talking today on March 5th. By the way, last day probably of Scruffy Pat. Got the haircut finally. It was looking shaggy there. And we're gonna get cleaned up, so don't worry for free agency. But we're here to talk on Thursday, March 5th, about some interesting information regarding John Harbaugh's priorities when it comes to rebuilding and retooling and evolving this roster here in his first offseason going into the 2026 fall. We all knew, as we talked about yesterday, about the release of Bobby Okereke, and as I was explaining to you all here, John Harbaugh believes in strengthening the middle of the field. And that you think of that as like the backbone of your team. If you work out, or if you have ever listened to a bodybuilder, it's like strengthening your core to enable the extremities and every other part of your body and of the whole to function properly. So that certainly is a huge deal in where John Harbaugh is looking to build this team. But arguably the greatest need on this roster is a number one corner. They drafted Deonte Banks a few years ago in the first round. He looked like a number two corner under Wink Martindale. And then once Shane Bowen became defensive coordinator, he backslid severely. And now really he's only useful at this point as a kick returner. Surely they will try to get a little bit more out of Banks as a reserve corner. But right now, he's useful only to them at the moment as far as the end of last season in the return game. So that's a swing and a miss. In the slot, you have Drew Phillips, who is a stout run defender but has struggled in pass coverage. And on the outside, you have Paulson Adebo, where you're locked in contractually to Paulson Adebo for another season here. So the Giants really, in a lot of ways, not a good strategy, but you do have to create some competition. But you have to kind of cross your fingers a little bit and hope that the evaluation and the valuation on Paulson Adebo last year, with him now being the third highest scheduled cap hit on the team for 2026 as of today at $24.1 million, you just kind of have to cross your fingers and hope that that evaluation, kind of balances itself out after last year with him battling injuries. And frankly, I think you want to see more fight from that player come this fall under John Harbaugh. But the interesting development is the news reported by the Kansas City Star. Okay, this was reported first by Kansas City Star reporter Sam McDowell. Is that when the Los Angeles Rams landed Trent McDuffie, the corner from the Kansas City Chiefs, in a trade yesterday, a blockbuster trade, first blockbuster trade of the spring. The Rams gave up a huge haul. They gave up a first-round pick, so a late first-round pick. That's number 29 overall because they actually own the Falcons' 13th overall pick in the first round, and they give up their own at 29 overall. So they give up first round, fifth round, sixth round, and a third-round pick next year. Okay? So, and by the way, welcome everybody here to Talkin Ball Daily. This is a new feature we have on our channel, 9 a.m. Eastern, every weekday, where we talk about either the latest development of the Giants or what's going on in the business, what it's like covering the NFL. We talk around the league as well, not just Giants. And I see we got Chronicles in the house. He said it would have made no sense for the Giants to make that trade. I'll get to that question and comment in a moment. No Mets agrees. Sonny says, how do you subscribe to the channel? You just go to the main YouTube page. Just go to my YouTube channel. And if you go to my landing page, let me give you the exact URL so that I'm not misleading you. So if you go to youtube.com/@PL on NFL, so the @ symbol, so it's youtube.com/@ PL on NFL, that'll take you to the landing page. And then there should be a button right there for you to just subscribe. No, Met says too steep for the Giants. Okay. See some other comments and questions rolling in. We'll get to those in a second. So I wanted to address Sonny's question. You did subscribe. Awesome. NY Giants Preservation Society says not a major priority, but hoping we get accomplished punter because Gillen doesn't cut it. Right. So, all right. Let's talk about the corner situation first, and then we'll get to the questions about these other positions, which you guys are raising, which are very, very smart and on-point questions. So, Chronicles, I'm going to disagree with you on the trade idea. So, now let's talk it through, because there's different versions of what a trade looks like, right? If you're saying you wouldn't want to see the Giants give up all those picks for that kind of player, I could get on board maybe with that concept that you're talking about. But the reason the Giants didn't win this trade is because they weren't willing to go that far. So the report from Sam McDowell, the Kansas City Star, is that the Rams won this trade negotiation over the Giants because they were willing to go first-round pick plus on the deal. That means giving up a first plus more to give the Chiefs that added value. Now, it hasn't been reported, and I don't know the exact offer that the Giants made. But imagine the Giants were not giving up the number 5 overall pick in a trade like this, right? The Giants have number 5 overall. If they were willing to give up their first at 5 versus the Rams' first at 29, this would not have been a conversation, right? So that's not happening. Most likely what was happening here was the Giants were offering 37 overall in the high second round and something else involved in that package. And what got it done was the fact that the Rams had 13 and 29 in the first, and the Rams said, fine, we'll give you one of our first rounders. Because the Rams have, they had 13, then they had 29, and then they had 61 later in the second round. So really what this came down to was the Giants looking for an expensive but reasonable deal when it comes to the premium position that you're attacking. So Chronicles, when you say no sense, it would make no sense to make that trade. I mean, certainly it would make no sense for the Giants based on the first round pick they hold to make that trade with a first. But would it have made sense for them to use that second round pick, let's say plus a late round assets this year? So let's look at the Giants draft picks. The Giants have a first, a second, a fourth, a fifth, and 3 sixes, right? So if the Giants were willing to give up 2 late sixes, the second this year and a third next year, would you still not have done that? That's more like what the question would be, balancing it out. I think what we should take from this, a couple things. One, as I noted in my Combine notebook coming out of the NFL Combine, the Giants were going to and are going to, in some form this offseason, make a meaningful investment, whether it's free agency or the draft, in the corner position, being aware that even though they have some players there, and even though they have a lot of money invested in a Paulson Adebo, they still know deep down they need a number one. They're looking for a number one. That's what this pursuit of McDuffie was about. And so we've all focused on Sonny Styles. We've all focused on middle linebacker, and certainly releasing Bobby Okereke creates a hole that needs to be filled with a significant investment. So that's going to happen, right? And you have to imagine that Kayvon Thibodeau, if there is a Kayvon Thibodeau trade, look at what the Giants are trying to acquire, guys. They're trying to acquire players. You know what I mean? So if Thibodeau were to be traded for a draft pick, it might be for a draft pick they're going to use in a trade. Or at this juncture, is it more likely they're looking to ship out a Thibodeau if they're going to trade him in a package for another player at positions like inside linebacker and corner where they actually really, truly need assets and starters versus the edge where you're going to lose something losing Thibodeau, but you do have Burns and Carter to actually put on the field, right? So, you know, you look at Pro Football Focus. If you sort Pro Football Focus for, now the grading system in and of itself is subjective. But if you look generally at like corners who played 50% or more of their snaps and just ballpark it, like how did they fare in that group, Trent McDuffie was top 10 corners when it comes to overall performance according to PFF last year. And a solid run defense grade from PFF, like just under 80, which is solid. Now, they didn't make this trade. They didn't get Trent McDuffie. But what we now know is that they are looking for a number one corner. I talked to a source yesterday who is aware of the Giants' kind of plans in free agency. And they said that they expect the Giants to be in the free agent corner market at a starter level, right? Now, obviously, the pursuit of Trent McDuffie tells us that as well. But this is just more information now coming in. Like, it wasn't just about McDuffie. It was about being willing to spend, whether it's in assets or money or both, in the McDuffie case, on a premium player at that position. Now, it'll be interesting to see if there's any other corners who the Giants are able to identify on the trade market available. I'm looking into that. On the free agent market, there's Jamel Dean from the Buccaneers. He's a player the Giants pursued in a pretty big way in 2023, and he opted at that point to re-sign in Tampa, even over, if I recall at the time, I'm pretty sure the Giants might have beaten the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offer that year, and he still decided to stay, or beat it in like some versions of the measurables of the deal. But Jamel Dean is someone to look at. Now, that's so that was same, I'm obviously same general manager, but John Harbaugh is running the show now. So his evaluation is what's going to mean something, but I don't think that history is insignificant. Nashawn Wright from the Bears, Tariq Woolen from Seattle, Rasul Douglas from the Dolphins, and Jalen Watson from the Chiefs, other names that stand out to me there. Mansour Delani, the corner from LSU, I believe is how you say his name. He's somebody that at number 5, or maybe in a trade down even, could be somebody that factors into the Giants' pursuit there. And as far as inside linebacker, I mentioned Demario Davis yesterday. I saw Jordan Rodon from ESPN mention Devin Lloyd from the Jaguars. I think that's a good name to throw in there as well. So good job by Jordan there. Alex Anzalone, Alex Singleton. It'll be interesting to see. The Giants have a history of kind of, sometimes you can identify who they're on very clearly. Sometimes you can identify the position, but the Giants are very reserved as far as like showing their cards until the negotiating period starts. So Monday will be an interesting day. And we'll end up doing a Talkin Ball live on Monday. You can book that, because that's a day when there's always one or two players that the Giants have had kind of like an index card on their desk for example, with the phone number of the agent, and they're waiting for, 4:00 that day or whatever it is. And once that time hits, it's bang, like it's right under the phone. And that might be the first time they indicated that level of significant interest in that player. And so even though there's not supposed to be tampering before that period, a lot of teams talk, everybody talks. The Giants, though, are one of those teams who they have a reputation for really trying to stick by that rule. Think of it, John Mara being on the management council and all of that, being an influence. So that's part of what's interesting about this. But let's get into your questions. But I think the main takeaway from today's Talkin Ball Daily should be, as I noted in my combine notes, it would be a shock if the Giants didn't invest significantly in this. Now, I didn't know they were trying to trade for Trent McDuffie, right? I wasn't on that. Nobody was on that. But now that they've missed on that player, that now shows us where they're looking, what they're looking at, what they're looking for, and what they're willing to spend on. Because imagine this, McDuffie wasn't just going to be a trade. It was going to be a trade and a new contract, right? So that would be a trade plus a new contract. So That was almost Dawn Aponte's first, new big contract running the Giants salary cap. It would have been Trent McDuffie if that trade had gone through. So, all right, let's get into more questions here. Reminder, if your comment or question isn't answered or you want it answered first or you can't stick around, you can purchase a super chat or super sticker to elevate yourself to the top of the queue and to support the channel. But this is Talkin Ball Daily. These are meant to be quick snippets, right? Anywhere from like 5 minutes to a half an hour of us just chatting Giants, updating you, chatting NFL, talking NFL draft, talking about the business of covering the league and everything related to being a columnist at a major national daily newspaper, as well as launching a podcast, a YouTube channel, and a brand. And you guys obviously are the main reason why we are able to do this and why this community continues to grow. So thank you all for you who are here, who are listening. And all right, let's see. So Giants Preservation Society mentioned that hope we get a new punter because Gillen wasn't cutting it. Yeah, I think the whole kicking operation, right, from finding a full-time kicker and investing in it to finding a new punter and investing in that. It's tricky because the Giants don't have the kind of assets that you'd want to fully turn over the kind of roster that they have. So this isn't a quick fix team or roster by any means. But those are absolutely needs. I mean, the Graham Gano experiment is over. Obviously he played some good football for the Giants, but, that's over. Jamie Gillen really struggled last season. Their punting game was a massive thorn in their side and weak point in the second half of the season, especially. And so, yes, I think you can expect changes there. I mean, remember, even though the rookie kicker missed the kick and the Ravens missed the playoffs, and that's what people right now is fresh in their minds. I mean, John Harbaugh and the Baltimore Ravens, not only does Harbaugh have a special teams background, right, as special teams coordinator for Andy Reid back in Philadelphia way back when before he took the Baltimore Ravens job, but also like when the Baltimore Ravens had the Justin Tucker scandal and they had to get rid of one of the best kickers of all time, and they had a major obvious issue there. I had to double check what round. They used a 6th round pick on Tyler Loop, the kicker out of Arizona, who is now the kicker for the Baltimore Ravens. So the Giants have 3 6th round picks this year. So you think of it like, could they use a late round pick on a kicker? Could they end up signing one? More than likely you're trying again to look long term, but also you want to make sure if you're drafting one that it's somebody with the kind of track record where you feel confident in their ability to handle the pressure immediately of being in the NFL. Punter, kicker, all those things, though, on the Giants list. But this is, all right, let's see. Roman says, Pat, any word on the golf match between you and Jordan? I have been waiting for that bomb to drop. Yeah, we got to get that going, Romans, right? And we got to film it. We got to be on camera with that, I think. Got to be like an episode, like a crossover, like a Breaking Big Blue Talkin Ball crossover episode on the links, right? I think that's what we got to do. We got to set it up. I mean, we have well, listen, now, actually, you mentioned that. You know when we might be able to do it? Maybe we should do it. We should get to training camp early in West Virginia. And on like an off day before we start having to work and cover those practices, maybe we should ask the Greenbrier to let us on their resort course and do it there. What do you think of that? How about that news, by the way, that the Giants are going to the Greenbrier, this massive, sprawling resort in the middle of nowhere in West Virginia, a location that has a lot of history to it, and other NFL teams have held training camp there, have practiced there. Some of these West Coast teams have spent the week there in between when they have 2 East Coast regular season games. Like the San Francisco 49ers, I believe, remember the week that they came to MetLife Stadium? Maybe they played 2 straight games at MetLife against the Jets and Giants, I think it was. And they had a bunch of guys get hurt. and they were complaining about the turf. I believe in between those two games they had on the East Coast, that was how I remembered it. I can't remember if those were the two games. But that week in between, I believe they stayed at the Greenbrier. So that's expected to be the first 2 weeks of camp or around then. And the Giants say that they're doing it because of World Cup logistics, with the tournament ending right before the scheduled start of their camp. The final is going to be at MetLife, as well as ongoing construction to their facility that John Harbaugh has commissioned. So that'll be a big change. They haven't been away since 2012 at Albany. And that'll be a big change. That'll be a big change to, obviously, for fans. It'll be an interesting road trip. Supposedly, the Giants intend to make a lot of those practices available to the public. I don't know exactly how much. We'll give you that information as we get it. But certainly, my one take on that football-wise is that one experience covering the Rangers in the NHL years ago that I remember, for like a team building across sports perspective, is the Rangers, the year they won the President's Trophy that I was covering them, they were an incredible road team. They were the best road team in the league. And it felt like every time they came back to Madison Square Garden, things would go flat. They'd get shut out. They'd lose to backup goalies. And then they'd go on the road and go on like a 4-game road trip and win 3 or 4 or go 3-0-1 or whatever it was. There is, not every team, okay, but there is 4 teams, if you handle it the right way and if you emphasize the right things and if the group buys in, you can become a very close team very quickly and bond stronger than you would otherwise by being on the road together in one place, the shared experience. It's like us versus the world. No one else is here. We're putting in the work here. Even when you get in those tough times during the regular season, it's like you can harken back to those quiet moments in West Virginia, studying late in a conference room. There's nothing to do. You can't go out. You're not going out on the town. You're not going to the city. You're not going to some card shop to do a rip at 9:30 p.m. with practice at 10 a.m. the next day. It's just you, your teammates, your coaching staff, and basketball and football. I've been coaching a lot of basketball this winter, so basketball on the mind. But you get it. You get what I'm saying. So that's, to me, that's a positive. That's one positive element that can develop from going to the Greenbrier. But yeah, Romans, maybe Jordan and I, maybe we do our match at the Greenbrier. And what do you think? There's handicapping involved in this match, or is it straight up? What do you think? Chronicle says, I think the Kenneth Walker thing is legit, though. I think Harbaugh is going to take some swings. They definitely know that they need a number one back, and they don't have one on their roster. I'm very interested in the Kenneth Walker situation because look at what just happened in the McDuffie situation. The Giants were in on that player, right? But ultimately, now listen, this happens in negotiations. Sometimes you win them, sometimes you lose them. It's like a game of poker, right? But in that situation, the Giants got leveraged in order for the Chiefs to get more out of the Rams to trade the player. So now you have Kenneth Walker, Super Bowl MVP, Giants. Are the Giants a team that is going to pay Kenneth Walker what he believes he's owed? Are they going to give him the biggest deal? And is Kenneth Walker just looking for the best deal because he just won a Super Bowl and now what he wants is to get paid and that's it? Or is Kenneth Walker going to look to find a contender that matches something close to what the Giants are offering, and is he going to use that Giants offer as leverage to go somewhere else? That's a question that you have to ask yourself. Now, again, like I said, that this happens. Like, this is what happens in negotiating. But the interest, no doubt, in the running back and in the high level and at the top end of the running back market is there for sure. Now the question is, who do the Giants close on, right? Who do the Giants close on when it comes to when it comes to pursuing high-level free agents and trade targets. But Jeremiah Love, impossible to take him out of the running in the first round either. I'm hearing so many people say the Chiefs got took in that trade, but I don't think so, says Loaded. I think the presence of the third-round pick next year is significant. Like, a third-round pick is a day 2 draft pick. So they got a day 1 pick, a day 2 pick, and 2 additional draft selections. And for me, they're probably using some of those assets to move around the board to get players they want anyway. Also, the Chiefs do have a history. They have a philosophy with Andy Reid of they don't give out second contracts normally as an organization to defensive backs for whatever reason. So I would say it seems like they did a pretty good job of getting a first when, like, let's say if the Giants were pushing hard and were offering that high second, they're able to get a first out of the Rams. That's solid work, right? I think with these trade negotiations too, you never know. Like, if the Chiefs were able to identify a couple of teams who were really hungry for that corner, if you open it up too much and try to get too greedy for something higher up in the draft and it becomes public that you're really trying to trade this player, then sometimes that can compromise the price that you're able to get, and then you get taken that way. So it's like some discretion involved in the negotiations in order to not open it up too loudly and publicly. So that could be part of the reason why, like, some people might say, couldn't you have gotten a higher first for a player of this caliber? But then again, from the Chiefs angle, it's like, well, negotiating wise, we don't want to look desperate that we don't want to pay this player and we want to trade him, because then teams might say, well, why would I offer them a first then if I know that they're trading him, So, yeah, I think the presence of the third is important. Ultimately, when you trade a player of this caliber, what matters is hitting on some of these picks, right? Or turning them into players that can factor in. Now, this is also a different scenario here. Like, the Chiefs are not operating from the same place that some other teams are. They are a team now with a quarterback on a massive contract that's had to be spread out and then restructured. They're not rookie quarterback contract, tons of cap space elsewhere. You can just pay this player, pay that player, and spend money on big contracts on players all over the field. Now they have to be strategic about adding cost-controlled players. Like, people say that, we've talked about this before, but some people say the salary cap isn't real, right? Because you can move it around. But this is an example, too, of, like, you just can't pay everyone. Like, the salary cap does create some limitations on what you can do as a roster. And so I think ultimately, if they're able to get two regular starters / contributors out of that trade where they're not paying McDuffie, let's say they get a starter out of the first rounder and a starter out of the third and a backup out of one of the late round picks. Now that is like a high-end level expectation of what you get from that draft. Or if you get one starter out of one of the picks and you turn the other 3 into another regular contributor. Now you fill 2 holes on your roster instead of 1. Maybe McDuffie is a higher level player than both of those 2, but you're trying to form a whole that can complement the core of your roster you already have set, which obviously starts with Patrick Mahomes and Chris Jones. WWE is more real these days than the NFL, you're saying, Matt? Matt, that's an interesting point you make. The NFL definitely is a version of the WWE. There's no question about that. It's a show. It's a 365-day-a-year show now, a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week show now. And thank you for all the likes, by the way, from all of you. Hit your like button if you like what we're doing here on Talkin Ball Daily. And thanks for all the questions. We'll get through them, and then we'll wrap up, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Like I said on the last couple Talkin Ball Dailies, really special guest coming next week, middle of next week, to recap free agency, to talk football, to talk coaching. A big name. You're going to be excited for him. And on Monday at the latest, we're going to tell you who we're having on, and we're going to solicit questions for that interview as well. But to your point about WWE, Matt, I think the thing that you're really hitting on is that there's two games happening in the NFL. There's the game on the field, and then there's the game off the field, which is governed as much by perception as it is by reality. And what I mean by that is let's just use this trade for McDuffie as an example. There's the trade and what happened, and then there is the Rams selling to people why they didn't pay too much. There's the Chiefs selling to people why they didn't get enough. There's the Giants selling to people, whether it's out loud or behind the scenes, of why it's not bad that they missed out on it, right? And all of those things go into a pot, and the public perception becomes the reality of these certain situations rather than people accepting a set of facts. And that is the WWE part of it. Chris says Giants are going to the playoffs next year. I love your optimism there, Chris. I will say this. If the Giants go to the playoffs, I'll be the first one in line, excited for that, because it'll mean more passion here on Talkin Ball. It'll mean more live chats, more chats from the stadiums, which we do. If you guys are new here, we do live chats after every Giants game from the press box after I come right out of the locker room. It's one of my favorite things that we do here on the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard YouTube channel, PL on NFL. And so I would be pumped for that. Haven't had enough of a taste of playoff runs. Obviously, no taste of contending for a Super Bowl, so that would be great. I will say this though, Chris, and you don't usually hear me say patience, right? But that's not where the Giants have been. Lately, they haven't been in a position of, hey, time to be patient, time to wait. But with John Harbaugh here now, this is not a scenario of like, it's got to happen next year. You expect it to be more competitive soon, because obviously the Giants have been selling to you that they have a really good roster and that they're just a coach and a couple pieces away. But I think if you're being realistic about this, you just hired a coach that you think is going to be able to transform your entire organization for the better. And you look at this roster, they have so many needs that if this year's record doesn't match what you are hoping it does or what you think it could, that doesn't mean it's not heading in the right direction under Harbaugh, right? So I would say you can hope for what you're talking about, but that is hoping for that and expecting that are two different things, I think I would say. The Giants might have the best coach in the division right now, but they are still the third at best most talented team in the division. All right, try to rapid fire these. Any word on Giants' feelings on Carnell Tate? I know they had poked around on Mekhi Lemon from USC at the Combine, receiver, another position. It's really funny. It feels like there's a ton of position the Giants are prioritizing here, right? It's like they don't really have that much cap space. They obviously have mechanisms to clean it up. So we'll see where they go with that. But I know, yes, they are poking around. They know they need to make an investment on a receiver. To me, like a defensive standout or an offensive lineman, to me, makes sense more at 5 than a receiver or a running back does. That's just me. But with Malik Neighbors' knee situation, there might be a major need for that player at that position in the draft, considering that the free agent class of receiver doesn't have that high-end guy. But to me, the way I see it right now is offensive lineman or defensive standout at 5. That's just my opinion right now. That's what I would do. What do you think about Fred Warner rumors? Yeah, I don't know where that's coming from. I wouldn't give that any life. Niners would be crazy. Doesn't make any sense. Hey, Janet, Jaguars fan, says, Jaguars have Cam Little, best kicker in the league. Hope they keep him. Yeah, Jenna, it's interesting you bring that up. I was really confused. The one disappointing thing for the Jaguars at the end of that playoff game, Trevor Lawrence's interception at the end of that playoff game was disappointing because it's almost like as great of a season as Liam Cohn had and as Lawrence had and as the Jaguars had bouncing back, they completely mismanaged the end of that game. They had a chance to patiently manage that, knowing that they didn't need to get crazy amounts of yardage to get in range for little. And Lawrence forces the ball into coverage for an interception. That is the kind of weapon who, as you continue to go, as a team continues to grow, that sets you apart, right? As it did with the Ravens with Tucker. But like the Jaguars end up losing that game by 3 points, 27-24. And for me, if I'm covering the Jaguars, I'm all over that moment, covering that game. And even this offseason, talking to the coaching staff about the end of that game, it's like, you should have beaten the Bills in that game. You had an easy chance because of little to go down patiently with not a lot of time on the clock just to get in range for him to hit one of those bombs, right? And your quarterback forces the ball into coverage. Disappointing, and you need to be honest about that in order to get over that and get better and not make the same mistake the next time. Candy says, hey, Pat, I'm getting anxious about more cuts, possible restructuring contracts to get more cap space. Do you think they're still unsure of what to do? I don't think it's uncertainty, Candyman. I think it's patience. I think it's like Monday is the day that they need to be prepared to spend. So we do have what? Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We have like 3 or 4 days left to do that. So they do need to get on their horse if they're going to actually completely release people. But there might be a player like listen, James Hudson to me is a guy you can clear some cap space. He already showed you he had no poise going into a game for you. And why not just do it already, right? That's how I feel. But the Giants might say, hey, listen, we would like to do this. We think we should do it, but we kind of want to see early on what kind of signings and investments we are able to make in offensive line, both at starter level and depth level, with the draft also coming before we finally make that decision, right? So it could be like, hey, we'll keep this body on our team for now for depth purposes, OTAs, etc. But with the draft, we're going to need cap space. With potential decisions on extensions coming down the road, whatever it is. And then you could still end up making those restructures or making those releases elsewhere. So not every player situation is the same where it's like, hey, Bobby, we know we're going to replace him. He saves us $9 million. Done. Released. And we're giving him a runway to get a job on the market as well. Not every situation is the same, though. Some guy says, I can't enjoy the NFL anymore. Why is that? Greenbrier sounds optimal. We will need the lines to be... We will need the lines on your match with Jordan to be on DraftKings. Love it. Illa says, do you believe it's important to know what could be available in terms of free agency and draft prospects for the following year? So many just focus on the current year, having no knowledge of the 27 class. Yes, Illa. Now, that can change dramatically in the draft now because of NIL. More players are staying in college because they're making money in college, right? And they'll say, hey, if I'm a second-round pick this year, next year I could be a first-round pick. I'm already making more money now in college than in the SEC or whatever than I would be as a second-round pick next year. I'm going to stay. So you can't. The thing is, that information is important to gather and to scout out and to figure out. But you can't count on all of it either, right? So it's a huge part of that, Dilla, is accurately judging your team. So what I have said a lot about teams like the Rams compared to the Giants or the Eagles compared to the Giants or whatever, the Giants have struggled over the years to properly self-evaluate. So in other words, like we referenced yesterday, the Giants keeping Okereke for a full year after when there were people in the building you felt like it was time to move on. Like projecting who's going to be available next year is something that they do, but you have to be honest about projecting, hey, we might not have use for this guy next year, or Yeah, we signed this guy for 3 years, but after these first two, like we should probably cut ties because of his age, experience, declining this and that. Yeah, we like the person, this and that, but he's not getting the job done. So now let's put a priority tag on linebackers because we know next year we're really going to need that player, right? So that is a part of what the scouting department has to do. And they're working on those things, but you have to be honest about it. John Denver definitely on the practice list. Country Road, take me home. Have you heard any of the Fred Warner rumors Art has been reporting? Yeah, I don't know where that's coming from, to be honest with you. I think all 32 teams would like to have Fred Warner, including the one that has him. The Greenbrier is amazing, says QWERTY. Yeah, I've never been there. Looking forward to it. Did the Giants make the initial offer and then the Rams just swooped in? Don't know that. NFL ultimately wants to become the NBA in the offseason. Tons of trades just to constantly be in the public eye. That's right. Precisely why refs talk about throwing games with WWE. On defense, which positions will be drafted, which will be through free agency? Well, right now the Giants don't have a lot of picks. They have, what is it, 7 picks? I think it's 7 picks. Yeah, they have 7 picks. They don't have a third. So they have the first, second, fourth, fifth, and 3 sixes. That'll have something to do with that for sure. I think what they're trying to do here, Francis, is they're trying to attack. So releasing Bobby early, trying to trade for McDuffie. What you see is they are trying to address some of the key positions that they're really focused on in free agency and not just count on the draft for it, right? You want to be able to try to think that way because if, as an example, if you just counted on Sonny Styles being available at 5 and that was your whole plan, you didn't really go after any top linebacker in free agency, and then he gets taken at 2 or 3, now what, right? So that's just an example of why you don't do that. I would say what I want to see them do is add some legitimate experience and starter ability to the interior defensive line next to Dex, to the corner position, and to the inside linebacker position on defense in free agency. That's what I would like to see them do at the minimum. Would love to see them bring a guy like Hottie Ward back on the edge. And, especially if you're going to trade Thibodeau, you're going to need run stopping on the edge and edge setting as well. And then you're going to reinforce from there. Do they go back to the safety well in the draft compared to free agency because they're already spending on Javon Holland at that position and they have a second-round pick already invested in Tyler Dubin, right? Like those are kind of the swinging doors, or that's kind of like some of those things end up making those decisions for you at times. That'd be interesting to see. I think they probably need, listen, if I were running this team, I would want to attack every level of my defense in free agency somehow. A veteran who I know I could trust next to Holland at safety, at least one corner, middle linebacker, an inside linebacker. Hopefully you re-sign Micah McFadden, and then you get some interior D line help at the very least next to Dex, and then you supplement from there. Speaking of the Jaguars, have you heard anything about them trading Brian Thomas Jr.? There's been a lot of chatter around that from what I understand. I know he was a name that came up a lot at the deadline. It's been quiet around him recently. The Jaguars are a team that... So they're a team that they traded for Jacoby Myers, right? And they also like Parker Washington. They have said that Travis Hunter is going to play more corner, continue to play more corner, but that they're going to really try to make that his spot, his position. So at the moment on their roster, it's Myers, Washington, Thomas, and then they have De'Ami Brown and Tim Patrick behind them. So I don't know if they're going to trade him. I know that was a player that teams were inquiring about based on what looked like a surplus there. I think Jacksonville needs to decide whether they consider that a surplus, or with Hunter being more corner and them kind of pushing him to that side of the ball mostly now, is it a different calculus? And Janet says, no, Jaguars are not trading Brian Thomas Jr. I like it. Yeah, and he came on stronger late in the season too. But like I said, I think there were two different conversations there. There's with Travis Hunter playing a lot of wide receiver, do they really need Brian Thomas Jr. versus, hey, now Hunter's our number one corner who every now and then chips in on offense. That's different as far as the numbers go there. Speaking of the Jaguars, Runyon fits in that camp too. Yeah, Runyon will be an interesting player to watch. I actually think a healthy John Runyon Jr. helps the Giants. I think that's more the question than anything. Maybe that's a restruct, or, maybe that's a player. Like, are you really bailing on both guards? Are you bailing on both guards, I think is your question there. And that, again, calls into question people saying that they're going to invest in a center like Tyler Linderbaum. But wouldn't you say they need, if you were going to say they need to replace positions on the line, aren't both of their guard positions spots where you'd almost like to see them upgrade first before they do center? Right. Add what you can in free agency. Focus on the inside. Stop the run. Thanks for your thoughtful reply. Safety, corner, inside linebacker, some D-line. And I think in that order, Francis, I would go, for me, most important, corner. Now, you're going to pay more probably for the interior linebacker or inside linebacker. I think the more important piece is the interior D lineman helping Dex, right? I think their D line needs to get shored up. Everything can fall in line from there. Parker Washington stepped up big for the Jags, not just going by rumors. Like Pat just said, this has been going on for a while. Myers there also. Bretton Strange, a solid pass-catching tight end. Lawrence struggles with throwing the ball down the field. That's where Thomas makes his money. Might not be a good fit for QB. Had his great year with Mac Jones. Yeah, interesting team to watch. I'll dig a little bit more on Brian and on the Jags because Janet's obviously contributing a ton to our chat. Almost 50 minutes today on Talkin Ball Daily. Well, listen, we're going to see you guys again tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern. This is Talkin Ball Daily. This is our first week doing this. Basically, think of it as a daily radio show with me, Pat Leonard, New York Daily News NFL columnist and Giants beat writer, checking in with you guys every day about the latest with the Giants, the NFL, the draft, free agency, the business of covering the NFL, the business of launching a new podcast and brand and YouTube channel with Talkin Ball here. If you haven't, please subscribe on the YouTube channel. PL and NFL is the handle. Please hit those like buttons while you are here. And like I said, this is just another add-on to what we do here on the channel. And down the road, probably as we tier some memberships and the diehard Talkin Ballers really want this kind of, like those of you who are here for this every day, you guys are the Talkin Ballers, the lifers, the day oneers, the people who can't get enough. And I'm really grateful to all of you for being here. But that level of membership, this level of insight, this is going to become probably a special premium add-on to what we do. And I think you guys are all going to enjoy it. By the way, wanted to tease this as well. Joey B. Comedy, our good friend, diehard Talkin Baller and Giants fan, he's performing at the Apollo tonight, doing some late night comedy. So if any of you live in New York City or in the New York area, go get a ticket. Go check out Joey B. at the Apollo. Let's support our own and go check him out there. But as I wrap up this Talkin Ball Daily, which has gone 50 minutes, look at us. Just want to say thank you to all of you. And if you missed what we're doing here, if you showed up late, whatever it is, don't worry. We've got another one coming tomorrow. This one will live on the YouTube channel as well. You can catch up and just watch on your own. And the takeaway from today, remember, is corner is a priority. It's arguably the biggest need on the roster. And Chronicles kicked us off with a great conversation by talking about, hey, would this have been a smart trade for the Giants? And as we discussed, I think you'll hear an in-depth conversation if you go back and listen to the beginning if you missed it. It's really related to what were they willing to give up. And it also reflects mostly on Harbaugh and the Giants' recognition of where they need to spend assets. So as we look ahead, Is there another trade target on the corner market? Is there somebody in the free agent corner market that's going to be more of a premium and a target? Jamel Dean stands out. And are they going to attack that with a premium draft asset as well? I think it reflects positively on what Harbaugh sees on his evaluation of what the Giants roster is. And I'm excited to rejoin you guys tomorrow. I'm going to go ahead and start getting this golf round going with Jordan. I think it's a good idea. See you next time.